I have like a list of questions.
Sure.
Alright. For people that really don't keep up with what climate change is, what's like a good explanation for that's kind of quick, that's like simplified for a normal person?
So, climate is always changing, all right? So, there's no two opinions about it. But oftentimes, when they refer to climate change, uh, in the current context, it is the change occurring due to anthropogenic influence of increased greenhouse gas concentrations. Uh, I, I wish I could be much shorter than that in terms of defining what climate change is, because anthropogenic influence can happen in many different ways. It can happen through land cover, land use change. It can happen through urban areas developing along the coastal belt, urban areas just generally developing. And those effects are also anthropogenically influenced. Impact of irrigation as well. So, but in the broader context of climate change as it is used in the popular media, it is the impact of climate from increased greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, thank you. Um, so I found a study in Yale that like found out that a lot of Americans do believe that climate change is a thing. Like it said, 70% or more people seem to agree. But when it came to people thinking that they should do something
Mm-hmm.
or they think it's personally affecting them, it was like the majority of the people didn't think it affected them or anything. What do you think about that?
I think that's a clear reflection of our consumerist society. We uh, we have been pummeled with uh, aspirational goals that are hard to achieve without in some way affecting the environment. And so, if we are required to curb our aspirations, our habits of consumerism, it becomes painful and discouraging to talk about preserving our environment, preserving uh, avoiding or mitigating the impacts of climate change.
I agree. Um, do you think people should start actually worrying about it, or is it something that's like far away? Or
I think if you have a concern for future generations, including your own kids and grandchildren, uh, uh, certainly you have to be very concerned. But if you're concerned about the well being of yourself, probably less so. I think my generation, at least, can possibly survive through the impacts of the climate change. We will see some extreme weather events, but it is not going to affect me personally. But I will see a very large sector of most likely the impoverished people who will get affected. And I'm concerned about it as I should be. But it's not personally affecting me as in physically, but emotionally it does affect me that there are so many impoverished people who are helpless and are getting affected by it. A perfect example for that matter is the recent Harvey incident, or if I want to go a few years back, the Katrina effect. I cannot nail it to climate change, but certainly uh, the the potential impacts of climate change were somewhat well manifested in the impacts that we saw from those landfalling tropical cyclones in the region. And the way it affected the more impoverished people was certainly heartbreaking.
So you think like big tropical storms and hurricanes could be connected to the climate change?
Yes, but it is very difficult, and it's always going to be a point of debate on whether and how much did climate change impact a specific weather event. And I think that is okay for a TV show to debate about, but scientifically, we don't have to prove a point uh, if whether a specific weather event was affected by climate change, because uh, our projections are based on probability. We can talk about the likelihood of the frequency or the likelihood of the intensity of such extreme weather events changing as a result of climate change, and we have a scientific basis for it. But it's very difficult for us to prove that a specific weather event really occurred on account of a changing climate. And I don't think the critiques of climate change can claim that we don't know what we are doing. We are pretty clear on what we are doing, and we don't want to misinform people that we can clearly attribute a specific event to climate change. But certainly, the overall impacts are pretty well established scientifically.
Yeah. Okay. So just like generally worldwide, what are like the biggest effects that we see right now from climate change?
Uh, Worldwide, I think the foremost that comes to my mind, being a Floridian, is sea level rise. That is affecting the coastal populations significantly. We are seeing increasing incidence of heat waves around the world, including in the northeast US currently, which again we cannot attribute directly to climate change, but it certainly is occurring, and we expect such events to occur more frequently and more intensely in a future warm climate. The other anthropogenic effect that we are beginning to see is in air quality and air pollution impacts in the urban areas, and that has been clearly established in countries like India and China, where the air quality has been extremely poor and hazardous for human health. We are seeing some new interesting developments in vector-borne diseases, diseases like chikungunya, dengue, and the Zika virus, which were rather unknown, have now come into big regions in a big way, and the media has certainly shown how devastating it can be.
Okay. I also saw that with the heat waves, is it also like I saw that maybe that increases heat stroke risk for like older people, especially here in Florida.
That's true. So the risk for heat stroke is much higher. And this is a double whammy for us in Florida, because not only because of climate change we are affecting these weather events, but it's also that our population is aging, they're living longer, and Florida is becoming a destination for a lot of retirees. So we have a lot of vulnerable population that can be affected by these weather events.
So with the rising sea levels, do you think, since Florida gets a lot of money from tourism, do you think that's gonna like kind of hurt us economically, at least for Florida?
I think there is no two opinions about it that yes, it is going to hurt us quite a bit. Tourism has led to significant economic growth, and that is clearly reflected in the coastal development around the coast of Florida. And the more you construct around the coast, the more vulnerable you become to landfalling tropical cyclones. And if we go by what we understand from the existing science, the frequency of the most intense storms are going to become ever more slightly larger than in a non-warming climate. And that is certainly going to raise the vulnerability of all this coastal development that we are seeing around us.
Okay. So, with the people that don't believe in climate change, a lot of the time they like to complain that it's cold outside or it's like snowing. Is there a way to like disprove that easy? Or?
I think the notion that climate change is going to somehow reverse the seasons, that winter becomes like summer and we don't have winter at all, is not going to happen. We are not going to see the kind of day after tomorrow scenario like it is pictured in Hollywood. What we are seeing is a gradual and a significant warming that is affecting the ecology, that is affecting record-breaking temperatures to occur far more frequently than ever before. And so we might be reaching a tipping point in the sense that these record-breaking temperatures, either extremely cold or extremely warm temperatures, may no longer look like breaking news, right? It becomes a very common feature, and that is quite dangerous. I mean, recently I saw an article appear in a publication where they are expecting that in India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, the temperatures may go so high up in the summer that it would be impossible for laborers to work during the day. Just impossible. And for a huge population that is sustained in that region, if the labor force is not able to work during daylight hours, is going to be a huge disaster.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not good at all. So it is what we're concerned is about these extremes, which would just change the way we are living. So it doesn't mean that the winter becomes summer. It is summer becoming a lot hotter, the winters becoming slightly cooler in some episodic events, not on a regular basis.
Okay. So the purpose of the project was to it showed that a lot of people do believe in climate change, but I feel like not a lot of people feel like they should do something about it, or they can just support it. So you're part of the Florida Climate Group here in Tallahassee?
Florida Climate Institute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think is something that just a regular person can do to help mitigate the effects?
I think if you begin to consume less, that is the first step. That is, I think, the most important step. The rest of it is all lip service of sustainable development and such. That's not possible unless you make a very conscious attempt in consuming less and living more simply than how you're doing it. That, I think, is the best way that you could possibly demonstrate your concern for the environment. Consume less, live simply.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, so thank you.
Thank you.